Greetings, everybody. We are live at the Mackinac Policy Conference, the Detroit Regional Chamber's annual Mackinac Policy Conference. And, of course, my first interview while I'm up here is with Sandy Baruah, who is President and CEO of the Detroit Regional Chamber, our host for this event. Sandy, always a pleasure to have you on the program. Welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm the first interview. I'm honored.
Well, you know, you got to sort of set the thing up, right? And then I'm going to talk to your chair a little bit later on tomorrow, and that's going to close things out. Patty Poppy is going to be joining me to talk a little bit about this.
I'm here to break in the audience. Is that what I'm here to do?
And to give them an idea of what it is we're trying to accomplish up here this week, right? So that's what we're doing. But
awesome.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I think one of the items that we expected to be dominant up here was auto insurance. That sort of got fixed before everybody got up here in a rare bit of bipartisanship, a rare bit of cooperation, and dare I say civility at the Capitol. I just want to get your thoughts on the fact that this huge thing got done. Whether you love every aspect of it or not, everybody had to give a little something on this. We actually saw compromise.
Yeah, exactly. This is a world-class example of compromise where not everybody is happy, but most people are at least happy enough, right? And this is a big change. And, you know, we have lost in our country the ability to compromise. Therefore, we've lost the ability to get things done. And compromise, you know, doesn't mean that everyone gets everything. It just means that let's get 70% of what we want, and we'll go back later to try to get the last 30%, right? And, you know, that's what Ronald Reagan said. That's what, you know, other great leaders have said. I mean, some people are hyperventilating about this proposal, which I think is, you know, really too much. Is it perfect? No, but what we had was far from perfect.
Well, this is one of those issues where there is no such thing as perfect. I mean, insurance is one of those necessary evils, you know, and nobody likes it.
Exactly.
And it's a messy thing, but you know, again, but from your perspective, as somebody who has been preaching civility, been preaching compromise, the need for leaders to come together and come to solutions. I mean, what does this tell you about where we're going in the next couple of years when it comes to Lansing?
I think it's a very positive sign. You know, so first of all, I think the Republican leaders in the legislature and the governor have been doing a good job, by and large, by being civil, by not throwing the other side under the bus, by willing to sit down and work together. And I think that's an incredibly positive sign. I mean, you know, there's a tradition in our country, both at the state and national levels, of split government working quite well. And, you know, I think we're seeing an example of that right now with Gretchen Whitmer and the Republicans in Lansing.
Well, Sandy Baruah, my guest right now, of course, President and CEO of the Detroit Regional Chamber. This is your event. You've got goals that you have every year up here, things that you want to see, issues that you want to get addressed. Like I said, auto insurance is one of those that's been sort of a cloud that's been hanging over this conference for several years. That's off the table now. We still have infrastructure needs that we've got to do. You know, when you're listening to conversations or talking to people up here, what are they telling you that they want to see you guys advocate for?
Well, obviously, you know, the roads issue is huge, but it's not just the roads issue. I mean, yes, that is a pressing concern for all of us. We have to get our roads into some sort of workable order, and they're just not right now. All of us drive on our roads, and we know how bad they are. But we need to take additional steps. We need to have 21st century infrastructure. So it's not just fixing the roads. It's one, you know, making sure we have ports that work, that we have internet that works for all citizens. We need to ensure that our roads and our infrastructure are wired for the 21st century autonomous vehicle. I mean, here we are, the mobility capital of the world, right here in Michigan, and our roads are, you know, really from the last century. And, you know, that's just a dichotomy that cannot continue to exist.
Well, obviously, one of the things the Chamber's been working really hard on is making sure that this region is the mobility capital of the world. Mich Auto's been a big part of that, something that you guys are hugely involved in. This huge news that came out of Chrysler the other day, Fiat Chrysler.
Big news,
I mean, you know, just, okay, Memorial Day, we get word that there's going to be this Renault partnership with Fiat Chrysler. It's a great move, and it's something that both companies probably needed, but at the same time, it just throws another monkey wrench into this whole automotive equation, which has been such a huge part of our economy. How do you deal with news like this? I mean, you know, because big expansion in Detroit, obviously, with the new plant announcement that came. But still, again, now you're talking global uncertainty for a company like that. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
just saying,
it's
but
not
it's still, it makes everybody wonder
right.
where's
Listen,
it going to be.
Let's be crystal clear here. When Sergio was still with us, he had been setting up FCA to be merged or to be bought or to be partnered with another global OEM. Sergio was not shy about saying that's exactly what he was doing. So what Mike Manley has done here is basically just see to fruition Sergio's vision. And when you look at what FCA is strong, in terms of the products that they're strong in and the parts of the world that they're strong in, versus where Renault has strengths, this is a really good partnership because right now, every automaker today has to get up in the morning and make the donuts, right? They have to make today's Explorer or Jeep Cherokee or Chevy Impala, whatever it is, right? Because that's what people are buying now. But at the same time, they have to invest heavily in electrification. They have to invest heavily in next generation autonomous. That's hugely expensive, and it's going to take global partnerships to get it done.
Well, obviously one of the pillars of the conference this year is Prepare Michigan. You want to make sure that we have the talent
that's part of that
keep
pillar.
That industry and really to expand what automotive industry is, and because it is a merger of old and new tech, obviously.
Exactly.
Where are we? Are you guys comfortable with the steps that the state is taking, especially in the educational world, to make sure that we are indeed prepared? Because we are seeing a new emphasis on skilled trades, which is important, but still, you still need really highly educated people.
Yeah, so when it comes to next generation mobility, from a policy standpoint, Michigan is very strong. We have very progressive legislation on the books to support next generation mobility. But when it comes to education, it's a little bit tougher. We have a longer road to go there.
What can you push people to do up here in that regard? Is it just about having the conversation and getting them to think differently about it?
So we have a very specific and curated education agenda up here. You're going to see Thursday afternoon a 3-part agenda. Part number 1 is we're going to frame the problem. We're going to use data to show that Michigan's house is on fire when it comes to education. And what's going to be important about that presentation is that for anyone who thinks that Michigan's education problem is just a Flint problem, a City of Detroit problem, a Saginaw problem, you're going to wake up to the fact that no, this is a Grosse Pointe problem, this is a Northville problem. This isn't some of our most affluent areas where we're underperforming. Then we're going to say that change is possible. We're going to have an example. We're going to use the Florida example. So listen, you may like or dislike various elements of what Florida did, but Florida had the lowest graduation rate in the country. And now they're one of the highest performing public education systems in the country. And they did that in a relatively short period of time, so change is possible. And the third element of the programming, Craig, is going to be Launch Michigan. We are going to be talking about this statewide collection of leaders that have come together, education leaders, union leaders, business leaders, philanthropy, to say, listen, we're going to do this, we're going to reform Michigan's education, and we're going to do it together.
Is this one of those things that, if you reform this, if you fix this, if you build it, they will come, so to speak, because you're talking about entrepreneurship, economic development up here as well. This is one of the pillars here is this Grow Michigan, growing beyond the industries that we are familiar with here in this state. We've been talking about this for years. What sort of progress are we making on that front, and does one happen without the first one?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to entrepreneurship, there's a lot of things that go into that. One, to attract entrepreneurs, you need to be able to attract people. To attract people, you need a strong education system, so you can see that in math. But when you look at the elements other elements that go into entrepreneurship, we're strong in some and we need to work on others. So for example, where we need to work on is more venture capital. Michigan underperforms when it comes to venture capital, which is kind of strange because there's a lot of money in this state, and it's just not being deployed in a venture capital way. It's just not part of our ethos. So we need to do better at that. But when it comes to opportunity, look at downtown Detroit. Detroit and Grand Rapids both are meccas for young, smart entrepreneurs that are coming in for tech or for restaurateuring or arts or other kinds of entrepreneurial activities.
We talk about Detroit and what's going on there. Obviously, the news of Dan Gilbert's illness is something that got a lot of people talking about investment in downtown Detroit, dependence perhaps on individuals as opposed to a number of different people. And obviously, he's improving by the day, which we're glad to hear.
Yeah, we're very glad to hear that.
He was scheduled to speak up here. When you look at the impact that somebody like that has had, does it make you sort of stop and think, saying, maybe we need to diversify the portfolio downtown a little bit? Or is it okay the way that he's been handling it?
What Dan did, and listen, I've been in economic development for a long time now. What Dan did was that he curated downtown. He just didn't buy a bunch of buildings and hope that something good happened, right? He bought the buildings. He had a vision for the buildings. When you walk through downtown Detroit, it feels very authentic, because it's not like some other very high-end areas that you walk through and it's the same Victoria's Secret, it's the same Gap, it's the same Cheesecake Factory, right? Now, I'm not knocking those institutions. Those those are all fine places, but if downtown Detroit looked like a mall, the Mall of America, it wouldn't be authentic. But Dan had this vision of having this kind of very authentic, very kind of, unique environment that was still, kind of a destination, but a different kind of destination than you'd find at a high-end mall.
Well, obviously he was supposed to speak here at the conference, and like I said, we're glad to hear he's doing better. He's sending up his next, his number one, I suppose, is going to be here and speaking instead.
Yeah, we're very glad. Bill stepped up right away and said, "Listen, Dan obviously can't make it," and we reached out to Dan as soon as we heard. I sent him a text saying, "Listen, hey, first of all, the most important thing is your health. We're you and your family are in our thoughts and prayers. Don't worry about the conference. We'll obviously be fine. We got more than a dozen national speakers coming in." And then Bill kind of raised his hand and said, "Listen, if you want me to come up, I'm happy to take Dan's spot." We said, "That's perfect. That's great." So that worked out really well.
Well, you mentioned national speakers. You've got Stacey Abrams coming up here and Jeb Bush, so you've got people on different ends of the political spectrum.
We
obviously.
always do.
But talk about Stacey Abrams for just a second.
Yeah.
What was it about Stacey that got you excited to have her up here?
We look at our stage and we said, listen, there's different kinds of diversity. We want to make sure we're reflecting on this. There's the obvious kinds of diversity that everyone thinks about: gender diversity, racial diversity, and we work hard to make sure that happens. We also look at geographic diversity. And we also look at ideological diversity. I don't want this conference to be, even though we are kind of a center right organization, we're a chamber of commerce, so
sure.
we kind of lean more to kind of the center, the conservative end. But we want this conference to be a place where everyone feels comfortable. I want, and no matter who you are, you will find someone on this stage that speaks to you. And so, Stacey Abrams, a liberal from Georgia. We have Michael Porter, a very business-focused person out of Massachusetts. We got the ex-Florida governor up here. We got the ex-Ohio governor here.
John Kasich, that's right.
Yeah, we've got Matthew Dowd, who is a very noted national political commentator with Michigan roots. We've got Harold Ford Jr., who is kind of a fixture up here. Yep. Also with Michigan roots, but plays on the national stage. So it's going to be really interesting.
Well, last little bit of time that I know, because you've got about 8 other interviews that you've got to do at this morning. But I want to talk a little bit about this Love Michigan pillar here at the conference.
Isn't that fun?
It's about sustainability, stewardship, all the right things. The reasons that we're up here to remind people that we are stewards of perhaps the most precious resource in the world.
Water.
Water.
Yeah.
There's new attention focused on things like PFAS contamination.
Yes.
Flint obviously has got people thinking about water. Do we take that role, that stewardship role, seriously enough in Michigan?
Yeah, I think we are. I think, as tragic and terrible and unforgivable as the front water crisis was, at least it has opened our eyes to certainly underground infrastructure and how important that is. Flint's not the only city in the country that is, obviously, is the highest profile example of that, but it is something that we're all struggling with in lots of different communities. The world's most precious resource is water. It is water. It's not oil, it's water, and we have more of it in the Great Lakes region than any other place on the planet in terms of fresh water. So when you think about, how do we ensure that the connection between Canada and
the protesters
Michigan,
were out in force when we were getting off.
And actually, and we're okay
Line
with
5
that.
protesters.
We're okay with that. We have no problem. One of the things that we celebrate here is democracy, and as long as they're respectful, we want to be respectful of them.
Well, that's something that still has yet to be resolved. What's going to happen with that? There's some sort of competing thoughts on what should happen with Line 5 and the infrastructure project, the tunnel that would be going under the water right now.
We were really hopeful
it's going to be resolved in the courts at some point.
Yeah, we were really hopeful that the plan that Governor Snyder had put together in his waning days in office would have held. We thought that was the right solution. Obviously now we're kind of back to square one. I think any delay is not good because this is important stuff.
Well, Sandy, last question for you.
Yeah.
What are you personally hoping to get out of this conference this year? I mean, obviously, you just want to pull it off and everything to go smoothly. That's a big part of it.
Yeah. Everyone off the island alive.
Well, yeah. What do you hope to gain from this?
So, there are really kind of two things. One, I do hope that with the elixir that we have between all our business leaders, all the C-suite that's up here, with the legislative leaders, that we'll be able to at least progress the roads conversation in a meaningful way. We're one of the few, I think the only business organization in the state that took a look at Governor Whitmer's plan and said, this is the best plan that we've seen that actually solves the problem.
It's realistic.
It's and we said, listen, we're open to other plans, but no one has yet stepped up with another plan. We're anxious to see somebody else's plan, but right now we think that's the only game in town, and we're going to be supportive of the broad outlines of the governor's plan. The second thing is we really want to highlight the importance of this Launch Michigan collaborative that has been created. We serve on the steering committee of that. We have been working on K through 12 education issues for a long time. A lot of people have, but we haven't gotten anywhere. And we need to tackle it in a different way, and I think Launch Michigan is it.
All right. Well, we will check back in with your organization as the week progresses here at the conference, talking about a new study that Mich Auto just put out, taking a look at the impact of the automotive industry on the state. So we'll get to that as well. And, of course, your conference chair, Patty Poppe, is going to be joining me later this week. So we'll sort of wrap up a little bit later on. But best of luck, sir.
Thank you, sir.
So far, so good. Off to a good start on this Wednesday.
And, and the sun is shining, so all is good.
Surprise, surprise. I wasn't prepared for that, to be honest with you. I had everything ready for the rain. It didn't happen.
I paid Dan Musser an extra $50 to order good weather, so it seems to be working.
All right.
Thanks so
Sandy
much, Craig.
Baruah, of
Appreciate
course, is the president and CEO of the Detroit Regional Chamber, joining us here on the Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit.